We'll get started. So for all that don't know, on the left side you have what is like a what's the best word for it? On the left side you have what is like a prototype or like a draft of a possible Creole textbook, and I call that Cahier Creole. And I can even show you the beginning of it. Cahier Creole, Book 1, Volume 1, Creole Inc. And so this takes you through chapters. You have pronouns, you have adjectives, you have verbs, static verbs, non-static verbs, etc., etc., auxiliary verbs, tense markers, etc., etc. And it just gives you like the basics of how to speak the language. It gives you activities, etc., etc. This is currently going through with Creole Inc., which is the organization that I'm a part of. Now, on the right side, we'll basically be going through all of this, either the worksheet or any questions that you have. So let's start off with, as in the earlier video, I showed you the pronouns. So on the left, you have in Creole, mo, which is I in English, to, which is you, li, sa. So li is actually used for he and she, and sa is mostly used for it. Now sa, as you see, and I'll highlight, sa, I'm underlining it actually, and italicize it. Sa is sometimes used for they. So sa kone, sa pa kone sa yap fe, sa pa kone sa pe fe. Then you have vous, vous autres, and zot. A lot of times when you're listening to Creole speakers from Louisiana, whether that be new Creole speakers or older Creole speakers, you would more than likely hear them say zot for y'all. A lot of times you might also hear zo. So like if you, which I'm going to write that down, zo, which is a shortening of zot, and it's not as much friction on your mouth per se with the T at the end of it. So you might hear zo. Now for nous, no, nous autres, that is we. And a lot of times you might also hear zot, but that is not as common as you would say for the zot for the you and y'all. And then you have ye. Now one thing that is important to understand is that vous can be used as in a formal setting. So think of it as formal and plural. So you might, for instance, have an elder woman, and you ask her the question, how are you? You say, comment vous, and ye. Let me switch this to the French keyboard. Comment vous ye. However, this exact same phrase can also be translated as, how are y'all? Now, in order to avoid said ambiguity, you might hear some folks, especially newer speakers, might say "Comment zot ye?" "Comment zot ye?" which could be "How are y'all?" Now, how would you say me, you in the indirect form, him, her, y'all in the indirect, us, them? Well, a lot of times in Louisiana Creole is actually quite the same. Now for the personal pronoun me or I, it will be a little bit different. So for instance, we have many different variations, mainly 3 of them. You have mo, mo, moi, and moi. And you might also hear more of a rounded with the nasalization of mo. And this will represent your me. This is how you would say me in Louisiana Creole. Now notice right here that you have a accent grave. That is actually how we mark the difference between mo, I, mo, me, and mo, the possessive. Yeah, the possessive. Do I have a YouTube? I do have a YouTube, but I haven't really posted on it a lot. and I'm gonna start doing that more often. Now, for you, instead of being to, as you might expect, it actually is toi. And if you are a Haitian Creole speaker, toi might be 3 for you. If you're a Louisiana French speaker, you recognize toi, but it's spelled as toi. That's how you would say you in the indirect form. So, for instance, to give you an example, a sentence example, you'll have in English, I give that to you. Or, for instance, I give you that, etc. It works the same way. In Creole, you could write that as mo don, toi, ça. And so you see the personal pronoun mo, which is I. Then you have the verb don, which is give. So let me color code that a little bit different. Don, which is give. And then you have you, this you. That might be hard for y'all to see. I don't know. I can't really see. Which is toi. Let me know if that's let me know if you can see that green. I don't know how well you can see on this thing. Then you have, you can see. Thank you, Mac. So then you have the indirect you, which is toi. Now, it's still gonna stay green. Okay, now I gotta change the black. I'm learning as y'all learn. I'm learning technology as y'all learning the language. So we all learn at the same time. Now, to give the indirect of he and she, which is him and her, you actually use the pronoun li again. So it makes Creole a little bit easier if you think about it. So her and him. And a lot of times you have to judge based off of context. So for instance, you might have a Creole speaker that says li pa connaît sa la pe fait. Li pa connaît sa la pe fait, mais mo te di li sa. Li pa connaît sa la pe fait, mais mo te di li sa. Which can translate to, he doesn't know what he is doing, but I told him that. But I told him that. Li pa connaît sa la pe fait, mais mo te pa di li sa. He doesn't know what he's doing, but I told him that. So you see 3 L's. Li, L, apostrophe, and li. So this li is the personal pronoun, which is your direct pronoun, which becomes he. So I'm gonna, let's say, I'm gonna put this in pick a color, any color. Let's go with dark blue, because it would be easier for me to see too. Oh, well, that might not be dark blue. Oh well. So you have li, which is your he. Well, then you have this one too, this L apostrophe. That also serves as li, and I'm gonna explain why that's an apostrophe later on. So let me just underline and italicize that. And then you have this li, which serves as your indirect, which becomes your him. And you can usually tell what is what based on if a verb, if something is being acted upon said person or said thing. So since it's saying I told him or I told him, then you can recognize that li is now in that indirect form. So it's a him and not a he. And again, I'll explain why this is contracted as we go along. Now, for the next one, you have, I also forgot to tell you that it can be it. Now for the next one, you have vous, vous autres, and zot. And in order to say you and y'all in the indirect, you will also use the exact same thing. Vous, vous autres, and also vous autres. And so the same rule applies from the previous section. Oh, why did I do it right there? Do you have these slides available? I do not have these slides available. However, I can record this and also give you more slides. You should record on YouTube too, so we can go back and watch. I actually want to do that. Yeah, I want to do that. I just don't know how to record the TikTok live by itself. I think it's recording it on its own, which is good because then I would just have to post it onto YouTube. If not, I'll just make a YouTube video and do it. No biggie. So vous, vous autres, and zot, which will be your indirect y'all. And in the case of the formal vous, which can be your y'all, it will be your indirect you. And so the same rule applies. If something is being acted upon, if the y'all or you is being acted upon, now it becomes your indirect, and you use it the same way. So, moi t'ai dit vous ça. Moi t'ai dit vous ça. I told you that. And for this one, moi t'ai dit zot. Ça. I told y'all that. This would probably be way easier with a mouse, now that I think about it. The accents are different for the O and E. Is that across the board? So it's not across the board. So a lot of times for instance, you're seeing this accent mark right here, which is the accent aigu. That actually makes the A sound when it's put on the E. And now when you see the accent grave, it sometimes changes the sound of the O. Sometimes, depending on if it's a word such as mo, it changes the meaning. So for instance, you have vous autres, zot, then you have mo. And mo, as said before, the only reason why they have the accent mark right here is so it can mean me instead of the personal I or even the possessive me, my. Now for us, same thing, doesn't necessarily change. Let me nous, nous autres. Now these two are the two common ones that you will hear the most. Nous and nous autres, which mean us. You don't really hear no as one of the pronouns. Direct pronouns is no for a we. You don't really hear no a lot for us. Actually, I've never heard it for us. So to give you an example sentence, you have, and sticking with the I told, but let me change it. Il t'a dit nous ça. He told us that. No, nothing on the line. He told us that. Il t'a dit nous ça. Now, last one is actually the same as the direct, which is ye. Now, you will see ye a lot in Creole because ye can mean several different things. but for this one you have ye as them. So using the exact same sentence, il t'a dit ye ça. Il t'a dit ye ça. He told them that. He told them that. Il t'a dit ye ça. Il t'a dit ye ça. Now, to do a recap on that, you have mo, moi, moi, and mon for me, toi for you in the indirect, li for the indirect, vous, vous autres, zot, indirect. And let me just underline these. Nous, nous autres, and ye. Now, you might be asking yourself, why are there almost 4 different ways to say me? And the reason being is because there's also different regionalisms and dialects. So for instance, you might hear mo. You might hear mo along the Bayou Teche. And even sometimes in Pointe-Coupée or even the river parishes. You might hear moi in the exact same regions. Bayou Teche. However, it's more common, I would say, to hear it around the river parishes or even Pointe-Coupée, also known as Pointe-Coupée, and also the Bayou Teche. Moi as well. A lot of times I tend to hear more white speakers of the Louisiana Creole language say moi. And that can be due to a Frenchianism, or that can be due to influence by French speakers in the area that have constantly and have historically looked down on Creole speakers. So that could be a reason, or it could just be a part of said language. So you might hear that along the Bayou Teche and PC, Pointe-Coupée, or even one place is the river parishes. But specifically around there, you have this place called Bayou Kramer. Not Bayou Kramer, but Bayou Buff. I can't even see that I spelled that right. Bayou Buff and /Kramer. I mean, if anybody's from around Bayou Buff /Kramer, then you might know what I'm talking about. And then you have them all same regions. So as you can see, these are all within the exact same regions, but it depends on speaker, and sometimes it depends. Sometimes these vary depending on the region. As you might hear moi more prominent in the river parishes in Pointe-Coupée, you might hear mon and moi more prominent in the Bayou Teche. So it depends. Now moving on from these, if anybody has any questions, mon is usually Acadiana, right? Well, it can be all. Anybody have any questions before we move on to the possessives? All right, we're on to possessives. You need practice. All right, so to give you a practice, let's do this. So I'm gonna create 4 sentences, and in the comments, tell me what goes with what. How to do all this? I'm gonna actually delete these. So before I delete them, y'all get a chance, look at them nice, read them, take a screenshot if you have to. All right, 1, 2, 3, bam. And now I'm gonna create the 4 sentences. All right, and they're all underlined for some reason. So this one, using the me. Use me. Let's let's see. This one will be using the y'all. This one will be the her. And this one is going to be your you formal. Actually, no. Just your you. All right. Can y'all see these? Let me know in the comments if you're able to see these. Yes, sir. This, or yes, ma'am. This is Louisiana Creole. All right. Y'all are able to see. So in the comments, we're going to start with number 1. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to say it in Creole and then tell you the translation in English. So, yete dit blank ça. Yete dit blank ça. They told blank that. They told blank that. So, pink dots, Curvy Counselor, and Mac, you are all correct. However, remember, if you're using mo, the accent mark goes the opposite way. Mo. But you can use moi, moi, or even mo in this context. All right, let's go for the next one. Nous pas connaît blank. We don't know blank. Y'all are all correct. You can use vous, vous autres, or even zot, which will translate to nous pas connaît zot, we don't know y'all. We don't know y'all. All right, now for her. Mon gain pour dire blank. Mon gain pour dire blank. I have to tell blank. The accent slows you down. Y'all are correct. Li. Li. Mon gain pour dire li. I have to tell her. Mon gain pour dire li. Last one. Now, is this the formal or informal you? I'm gonna give you a hint. I didn't write formal down. So, li te gain quelque chose pour. Li te gain quelque chose pour. She had something for blank. Li te gain quelque chose pour. And what would it be? So, the curvy counselor, not to, and pink dots, not vous, but dit Toussaint got it correct. He said toi. Remember, this is the informal you. The informal you is toi. So like in Zydeco songs, you might hear et toi, et toi. Et toi is you, or et you, et toi. So was that easy? Was that a little easy? Now moving on, we're gonna go to the possessives. Pink Dotsy said no. Trust me, it'll get easier. It'll get easier as time goes on. So we're gonna go over with possessives. And I hope y'all got something to write down. So for possessives, we have my, yours, hers, and his, and also its, and then ours and theirs. My, yours, hers, his, its, ours, and theirs. Now for this one, you will still be referring back to that original personal pronoun, direct pronoun table as you see on your left screen. However, things do change. And I'll tell you what the changes are. You have a change here, you have a change here, a change here, and a change here. So a lot of things change, actually. My bad. So starting off with my, you will actually use mo. Mo. But you see this little hat? This is what we call a circumflex. And circumflex. That's that little hat that you see. That's what you call a circumflex. So you can place that on words on letters such as O, such as an E, such as an I. Now, usually the circumflex is used in order to recognize that there is a letter that is missing, that used to be there but is no longer there. That still applies in the Creole sense, however, it is also used to designate when something is a possessive, when the word that is being used is a possessive marker. So for instance, mo is with a hat on it, with a circumflex, is possessive. Now what you're going to see with all these possessives is that they all have hats. They all have circumflexes. Now for yours, it will be to. To. Like your toe, a to. Just like how you would say you in the direct form. To te fais ça? To chien. To chien. For hers, his, and its, it actually changes completely. So you wouldn't use li as you might assume, as you do sometimes see folks who are beginners or who are coming from a different Creole language. They want to use li. They might use it in the Haitian way, as they'll put it behind the noun. They might use it before the noun. Li is incorrect. What you would use is so. So. The reason being is because in French, the pronoun for the possessive pronoun for his and hers in the masculine sense is son. And you see that in Creole, we actually took that, and we still have a little bit of nasalization, not all the time, but you have so. So. For ours, you actually have no. No. But you can also use nous autres. And some folks even use nous. So when you're listening to either older speakers or even some younger speakers, and they say, oh, no papa, they might even say nous autres papa, or they might say nous papa. So our dad. For theirs, you have ye. Ye. So I told you with ye, they got many different forms. Now keep in mind, while this one does have the circumflex, or that little hat, that little pointy triangle that designates the possessive, you're also going to see ye with this hat used in a different way. So it's important to recognize the context. Now we are missing one. And this is your y'all. Or a northerner might say you guys or something like that. I'm not from the north. But y'alls. Y'alls and the formal you, yours. So for y'alls, you have vos, vos, vos. Or just like with the nous-autres and the nous and the no, you can also say vous autres or vous, or even zot. Zot. Tego's correct. Me and Tego speak in Creole the whole time we talk to each other. Context is like 90% of the language. Zot. And for formal yours, so let me just put that in parentheses, formal, you will also hear vos and vous. Vos and vous. Now for mine, I'm gonna tell you about mine in a second. We haven't got to mine yet. So mo, to, so, no, nous autres, nous, ye, vos, vous autres, vous, zot, vos, and vous. It's not that much to memorize, if I'm being honest. However, we'll do some practices. So take a screenshot, take a look at this, write it down if you have to, and then let's get into some practice. So, there's ours. Actually, not this. It's. All right. So. Blank blank, chien, te quitter. Ooh, it's about to get a little tricky. Let's see. Yes, making a workbook. Which one? What do I want to say with that? I'm gonna change it to this. All right. Now, you have all these possessives. I'm about to erase them. So 1, 2, 3, bam. Now let's get into the practices. So number 1, my. Blank chien te quitte. Blank chien te quitte. Blank dog left. Blank dog left. What word would we put there? What word should we put in this blank? Now, y'all saying the right word. However, you're missing something on the O. What are y'all missing? That's right, Love Nola. The circumflex, the little hat. Mon chien te quitte. Mon chien te quitte. Te quitte. My dog left. My dog left. Number 2. Eu blank chaillé. Eu blank chaillé. Eu blank chaillé. Where blank is the cat is. That's the literal translation. Remember, this is theirs. Yep, that's correct. Ye. Ye. Eyu ye shaye. Eyu ye shaye. Where is their cat? Where is their cat? Eyu ye shaye. Number 3. Blank momo pas ici. Blank momo pas ici. Blank mom is not here. Blank mom is not here. Yep, yeah, correct. No, with the little hat, or nu. Now, Mac, if you do nu, you don't have to put that hat on the O. You just spell it N-O-U without the hat. But if you do no, N-O, the hat must be on it. Or you could do nuzot. So remember, if you're doing N-O-U, you don't have to put the hat on the O. But if you do nu or no with the N-O, then the hat must come on the O. This will be like contextual. All right, the last one. Blank shom pa net. Blank shom pa net. Blank room is not clean. Blank room is not clean. Y'all got it. Ooh, no. Do we think it's Lee? Do we think it's Lee? Love Nola and YG2JR. I'm gonna nickname you. I'm gonna put you YG. Y'all are correct. So Shom pa net. So Shom pa net. His room is not clean. His room is not clean. Now remember, with so is used for your his, hers, its. You wouldn't use li in this context because li will only be for your she, he, it, or her and him. So this one might be a little tricky. So remember, if you're doing indirect or direct, it's li. But if you're doing possessive, it's so. All right. Now, I was asked about mine. And I forget the actual linguistic term for this one, but I'm gonna just do possessive part 2. So we're looking at mine, yours again. Listen, mine, yours, your own. Actually, yeah, that's a better translation. Mine, your own, his own, his/her own. Their own or theirs, and y'all's own. You don't really hear that, but y'all's, etc. Y'all own, or y'all's own, our own, and like the formal and the formal your own, etc. Yeah. All right. So for like mine, your own, his or her own, their own, etc., etc., this is when you actually use a different form. So like if you're taking for example the sentence, that is mine. That is mine. You wouldn't be using the same possessive. You wouldn't be using my, but that is mine. So for this, we actually have 4 different ways of saying this, and it depends on sometimes where you're from, and also accent. Like if it's in front of a feminine or a masculine, or if it's in front of a vowel. Usually we're going based off a vowel. So you have mochan, moquin, mochen, or sometimes written mochen, and moken, also written moken. Mochen, moken, mochen, moken. So when you see these elongated ones, mochen and moken, those are usually before vowels. And then mochen and moken, not necessarily. And you can actually follow this exact same format for all of the rest of them. So for your own, tochen, token, tochen, token. It's quite simple. Sochen, soken, sochen, soken. Usually, if you're using mochen, you're more than likely going to use mochen. If you're using moken, you're more than likely going to also use moken. So keep that in mind. Keep them. You don't really want to be mixing. If you want to, go ahead. I'll be you. You make the language your own. But if you're using mochen, you also use mochen. If you're using moken, you also use moken. Or you could just not worry about it and just use mochen for everything. Yichen, yikan, yikan, or yi. Oh, spelled that wrong. Voila, yikan, mochen. And for the last one, chan, okay, chan, okay. So as you can see, it follows the exact same format. You really don't have to do any real thinking about it. And all of these are used almost in the exact same way as you would use them in English. So for instance, if we're taking that phrase that I had before, that is mine, you could say, ça c'est mon chen. Ça c'est mon chen. Ça c'est mon chen. Or you could say something like, mon chen la maison. My own house. Mon chen la maison. My own house. Do y'all want to practice that? Who am I kidding? Yeah, we're going to practice that. Now, this one might be a little bit tricky, just due to, bien fait, Boug, lâche pas, bonsoir, mon vieux, mon gars, pour courir mon lit. Ok, Boug. Merci pour jouer à moi et merci pour ton soutien. On toujours apprécié ça. So, for some practice, let's do the mine, yours, ours. That's a song, if I'm not mistaken, by what's that girl name? Mooney Long. And her own. Yeah, hours and hours. Blank. I actually just heard that sentence earlier today. Let me translate this better. This would be like a better translation. petit passé, small passé. Yeah. Actually. Right. Ready? So memorize these at the top. Record these down, screenshot them if you have to, write them down. And then let's get into the practice. So starting off with number 1, mine. Mine, remember that, mine. C'est blank chien. C'est blank chien. It's blank dog. It's blank dog. This actually would translate better as this. Y'all are all correct. Mon chien or mon can. C'est mon chien chien. C'est mon can chien. It's my own dog. C'est mon chien chien. C'est mon can chien. It's my own dog. Blank nom t'ai fait ça. Blank nom t'ai fait ça. Blank man did that. Blank man did that. I heard that phrase exactly today, actually. Y'all are correct. Tochan or tocan. Tochan non t'ai fait ça. Your own man did that. Tocan non t'ai fait ça. Your own man did that. Oh, that was a little bit of an interesting conversation. Our own. La maison t'est plus grand passé. La maison t'est plus grand passé. The house was bigger than. The house was bigger than. What would y'all say? Y'all got it. Now, remember this is our own or ours. Ours and ours. Yep. I forgot. It's okay. Yep, y'all are correct. No chien or no can. La maison t'est plus grand passé no chien. La maison t'est plus grand passé no can. Or even mon chien and mon can. No chien and no can, my bad. Due to la maison being feminine. So the house is bigger than ours. Or the house is bigger than our own. Okay, last one. Her own. No pitié, plus smart passé. No pitié, plus smart passé. Our daughter, or not daughter, our kid is smarter than. Our kid is smarter than. Y'all are correct. So chen or so can. So chen or so can. No pitié, plus smart passé so chen. No pitié, plus smart passé so can. Our child is smarter than theirs, or our child is smarter than hers, or her own. So Chan, thanks you. Now, for the pronouns and the indirect pronouns and the possessives, how are y'all feeling about those? Still need more practice? Are you ready for some question markers? As y'all can see below, the it's them verbs need more practice and study. Great. Frasa te moya méchant. Et c'est mon petit, huh? So for question markers, you can see that there's quite a few. However, these question markers are not as complicated as you think, and you don't have to use all of them. So for instance, you have what, and for what you see that you have two, you have quoi and qui. Now the thing about qui is a very versatile question marker. It's a very versatile word in the Creole language, as qui can mean what, who, and even which. What, who, and which. And that eliminates almost half of these question words that you can even imagine. So qui, if you want to be very simplistic, just use qui. So for what, you have quoi and qui. So for instance, you might hear somebody ask, qui c'est ton nom? Qui c'est ton nom? Qui c'est ton nom? What's your name? Qui c'est ton nom? What's your name? Or you might hear somebody say, quoi c'est ton nom? Quoi c'est ton nom? What's your name? Now, another, and I didn't write this down, but another word that we can use for what is actually ça. Now, ça, as you will see later on, is also a versatile word. Extremely versatile. I actually think li, ça, and qui, they do the heavy work in the Creole language. So sometimes you might hear somebody say, ça, ça y est. Yeah. Let me just write it this way. There we go. That's better. Ça, ça y est. What is it? Ça, ça y est. What is it? Or what is that? Now, if you are coming from like a French background, you might be thinking of words such as, or expressions such as qu'est-ce que, or if you're like a Louisiana Creole French speaker, qu'est-ce que. Well, Creole actually has that as well, and we actually do have that with a combination of qui and ça. So you might hear qui ça qui, qui ça qui, qui ça qui. Qui c'est ça? Which also translates to what is it? Or what is that? Qui c'est ça? Ça qui ça? Ça qui ça y est? What is that? Qui c'est ça? Ça qui ça y est? Ou ça ça y est? Now for your next one, you have when. When. How much does Kouri-Vini differ from Louisiana French? Grammar. Grammar, and also sometimes the definition of words. And we can get into all of that during these lessons. If you want me to do a comparison with French along the way, I can also do that. But I don't want to necessarily overcomplicate things in a sense. So for when, you have quand and et quand. These are virtually the exact same word, just with a slight pronunciation variation. So within any context, you can use these. So quand tu fais ça? When did you do that? Et quand tu courais là-bas? Or et quand tu courais là-bas? When did you go over there? So for this one, when or quand and et quand, virtually the exact same word, just a different pronunciation. Now for the next one, you have where. Where. Now this one also can be a slight variation. You have AU, AU, or OU. For, I think, Kirby Counselor, I think your question is for when? Yeah. You can pronounce both sentences. Can I pronounce both sentences? Quand tu t'es fait ça, quand tu t'es fait ça, or et quand tu t'es fait ça, or et quand tu t'es couru là-bas. Actually, what I failed to mention is that sometimes you might hear a ka. Sometimes. Quand tu t'es fait ça. So you might hear ka, which is not the full nasalization of the N. So you might hear ka. Just something to keep in mind. So for where you have AU, IU, and U. So for instance, AU, mon chien y est. Where is my dog? AU, mon chien y est. Where is my dog? Or AU, mon chien. Where is my dog? Or even, où mon chien? Where is my dog? Ayou mon chien yé? Ayou mon chien? Or you can put the yé at the end. Ayou mon chien yé? Or où mon chien yé? Now you do also have, and you don't really hear it as much, it's a little bit older. You might see it in older texts or even in older songs. Kikote or kote, actually, kote. You might hear that. But this is like an older text and sometimes in older dialects. You can actually read this sometimes. There's a song called Salongadu, and in the song it says kote mopiti la. Yeah. Kote mopiti la ye. Which is, where is my child? Where's my child? Some folks translate this BT because they think she's talking about her daughter. Where's my daughter? But kote mo biti la ye. Where's my child? That's in the song Salon Gadu. So if you want to go on Apple or Apple Music, Spotify, you can search up Salon Gadu and you can hear this exact same phrase. For how, luckily for y'all, there's only one word, and that is como. Como. It might sound like the Spanish como, but this one is more nasalized. Como. Actually, Theo, thank you for saying that. Kikote. Older people in Southeast Louisiana typically use kikote. Kikote. So to do that exact same sentence, kikote mopiti. Kikote mopiti. When would you use AU versus kote? It actually depends on you, as not everybody uses all these words. A lot of folks who use AU and IU or even U or O or U don't necessarily use kote and kikote. Some folks who use kote and kikote do use AU and IU. It's more of an idiolect type of thing, an individual type of thing. So you might want to use it, you might not want to use it. So for como, you have our questions that we can ask to better know somebody. Como tu ye? Ooh, I spelled that wrong. Como tu ye? How are you? Como les affaires? How are things? Como tú te conoces? How did you know that? Como. Now for why, you do have many different Y's. And usually people stick to the Y that they like to use. You have kofar, pourquoi, pouki. And you can actually spell kofar 2 different ways. You have some folks who might pronounce it kofé. You might have some folks who might pronounce it kofar. You have also, because I'm not going to forget that, coiffé. So you have kofar, kofé, coiffé, pourquoi, pouki. And these all mean why. Like a lot of times, and since we're talking from folks from New Orleans, or even looking at the old text from that came from New Orleans, you might see pourquoi. You might hear some folks say pouki. A lot of times in the Acadiana area, around the Bayou Teche, you're going to hear kofé, kofar, coiffé. River parishes, you're going to have a mix of these. You might also have a mix of these in the Bayou Teche with more like folks who are trying to speak closer towards French might say pourquoi. But in Louisiana French, we also say kofar. So it's really an idiolect type of thing. Choose which one that you like. Which one do you like the most? Personally, I hear and I use kofar. Everybody I know around me uses kofar. So, kofar, tout est fait ça. Kofar, tout est fait ça. You might hear this in the Zydeco song. Why did you do that? I think one of the Zydeco songs is from Kouri-Vini Zydeco, actually. Or I think he actually says Kouri-Vini. I say le dé. Kofar, tout est fait ça. Why did you do that? Or you have pourquoi t'as pas appelé moi? Ou pourquoi t'as pas appelé moi? Yeah, let's do that one. Why didn't you call me? And I believe this is actually in a Bruce Senpai song. He just goes by Bruce Senpai. And then you have Poquito là-bas. Why are you over there? Akadish. So there used to be. We know that there used to be. I don't know, me personally, since I'm not from the Cane River, I do not know many speakers from, if there are any speakers from Cane River. I do keep Elijah on my rotation by Little Nate. Whichever one I remember is probably what I'll say. Hey, if you rock with it, I rock with it. As long as you're using the language, I support it. So for the next one, you have which. Now y'all see I'm doing this because I don't got work. I don't have work tomorrow. Now you have which can be qui or quel. Qui or quel. Now remember what I said. That qui is very versatile. It's an extremely versatile word. Now we haven't used it in the other sense yet, but we will. Qui or quel. So you have, what's a good phrase? What is a good phrase? I'm trying to think of a good phrase. Qui la maison? Qui la maison ton gars? Qui la maison ton gars? Which house do you have? That might not sound right in English, but I'm just trying to use the which. Qui la maison ton gars? Qui la maison ton gars? Or you could say that, quelle la maison ton gars? Oh, actually, let's use what we just learned. Quelle la maison, c'est Tochan. Which house is yours? Which house is yours? For the last of the W's, of the big W's, you have who, which can also be ki or even kimun. So ki, kitoye. Who are you? Kitoye. Or you can say kimun toye. Who are you? Now, kitoye or kimun toye, kimun actually better specifies that you're talking about a specific person, that you're asking the question who, because it translates to which person or what person. Kimun toye. Oh, I did the wrong word. My bad. Who? Who are you? Who are you? There you go. And the last one that you see on that list is your yes or no. Now, in Creole and in French, we have a word that can be used for yes or no to designate whether a question is yes or no. So you have est-ce que, you have est-ce qui, and even est-ce que, or even est-ce que, or est. So est-ce que, est-ce qui, est-ce que, est. And this is used to only to let let the person that you're talking to know that this is a yes or no question. So, for instance, you might hear, est-ce que tu es là? Est-ce que tu es là? Are you there? Or you might hear, est-ce que tu connais lui? Do you know him? Now, if you're coming from the English language, which most of you are, or coming from the French language, which some of you are, you might think that we're able to invert questions, which is, for instance, such as, did you do that? Not did you do that. Golly, Tego, give me an example. I'm blanking out on English words these days. No inversion. Let me just put that. So, for instance, you can't say fais-vous ça? Like, did you do that? Fais-vous ça? Or fais-toi ça? You can't really say that. This is a no-go. What you can ask is, tu fais ça? You did that? Now, the thing that you have to notice, which is a go, the thing that you must notice is that when you ask a question such as this, tu fais ça, your intonation changes. You're using your higher pitch intonation. So you actually do the same thing in English a lot of times. You don't always invert your questions. Sometimes you ask, you did that? Tu fais ça? Or, if you want to ask a yes or no, est-ce que tu fais ça? Did you do that? So remember, in Creole, you cannot invert your question. Whereas in French, you can. Not really Louisiana French, we don't do that. Alright, now let's practice. Number 1. Ready? We're starting with number one. Blank lié. Blank lié. Blank lié. Is he? Blank is he. Blank is he. Yes, truly. Est-ce que is for your yes and no. Kimun, ki. Yep, those are both correct. Kimun or ki. Kimun lié, ki lié. Who is he? Alright, for number two, you have la clé. Blank, la clé, c'est pour toi. Blank, la clé, c'est pour toi. Blank, la clé, c'est pour toi. Blank key or keys is for you. Blank keys is for you. Also correct. Qui or quel. Qui la clé c'est pour toi? Quelle la clé c'est pour toi? Which keys are for you? Okay. Blank li fait. Blank li fait. Blank li fait. Blank he did. Blank he did. So I see qui and quoi, which are all correct, but what's another one you can use? There's a third one. Ça. Qui l'y fait? Quoi l'y fait? Ça l'y fait. What did he do? Ça l'y fait. Okay. Blank, to là-bas. Blank, to là-bas. Blank, to là-bas. Blank, you over there. Blank, you over there. Okay. Okay. All correct. Qu'au faire, pourquoi, or even qu'au fait, in a sense. Qu'au fait, pourquoi, qu'au faire, tout là-bas. Qu'au faire, tout là-bas. Pourquoi tout là-bas? Why are you over there? Last one. Blank vouillé. Blank vouillé. Now I know y'all know this one. Blank vouillé. Blank are you? That's correct. Comment vouillez? Comment vouillez? Y'all see? Creole's not that hard. Creole's actually really easy. Creole's a really easy language. Now I'm gonna let y'all get a little screenshot of this. Or hopefully I've written this down. If not, I'll try to see if the recording is actually recorded and then have this published on YouTube. Alright. And we'll do. Nope. Yes. Now we'll do the definite articles. Now, there was one person in the comments that asked about the difference between Louisiana French and Louisiana Creole, or how these two are different. Well, we can look at the articles. So, I don't know if you can see this clearly, so I'm gonna write definite articles. I'm gonna just do articles because we're gonna cover both. We're gonna cover both of them. So for articles, we're gonna look at your definite articles, your indefinite articles. So right here you have the, and this is your singular. And you have the, which is your plural. Now in English we use the and the Same way, you put it in front of the noun. So for instance, for your singular, you might have the dog. For your plural, you're gonna have the dogs. No true difference. However, in Creole, c'est Uruganu. Et je peux mettre ça dans le commentaire. Uruganu. For your singular, we actually have the ability to place the definite article behind the noun. As you can see on your left side, you have nom, which is your noun, and then you have this little hyphen, and this hyphen leads to the definite article, which is la, nom la, the man. Or you have, for instance, femme la, which is the woman. Nom la, the man, femme la, the woman. Now, if you are coming from a French-speaking background, you might know that these two, nom la and femme la, these are different genders. As nom is your masculine, I'm gonna just spell it like this because I am not going to. And then you have your feminine. Nom la, femme la. And usually that means that they have to correspond with their correct genders. So in French you might have le and you might have la. Now the thing is in Creole, in certain dialects, you also hear this. A lot of times you hear this on the Bayou Teche. So for instance, you might hear le nom, which also means the man, le nom. And for woman, you might hear la femme, which also means the woman. And due to that, in order to use those, you're going to have to remember what gender they correspond to. And so in order to avoid that, you could just use the genderless definite article, which is the la placed behind the noun. Now for the plural, this one also has multiples. So using the exact same format with the man and the woman, you have nom, laye, which equals the men, and then you have femme, ye, which equals the women, or even just women. Nom laye, femme ye. Now, you might notice something. You see this ye appear again. Now, when you're thinking about this ye, think of it as not they or not theirs or not, a form of to be. Think of it as them, but in Jamaican, like the Jamaican patois version, them. You actually place this, so you're placing this pronoun, which is ye. So you have ye, which is like that ye. You're placing it behind the noun. So femme ye, if you want to translate that literal, women them, or even woman them. Does that make sense to y'all? Let me know in the comment if that makes sense. Now for la ye, the way you can think about this one is for nom la ye, you're actually taking the la from the singular, which is nom la, so the man, and then you're adding ye behind it. So you're doing the man, them, in a sense. So the man, them. which will give you min. Nom la ye. Nom la ye. Now, la ye is used in Louisiana across the board in different parishes. Ye is also used across the board in different parishes, but you also have another one, and you hear it more often with folks around the Bayou Teche, and that's le. Le. Just like in French. Le, which this goes before the noun. So, les noms, the men, les femmes, the women. Now, unlike the masculine and feminine, le and la, it doesn't follow gender. It's genderless as well. So for any plural, you will use les noms, les femmes. But if you don't want to do that, and most beginners and most learners of the Creole language and folks who are speaking the Creole language now are more using la, ye, and ye. And you're going to hear ye a lot, especially if you're listening to old recordings, reading old things, or even speaking to elders and other folks in the Creole community. Now for now you've got for your other articles. You have, how do I press tab? So you have a and an. A and an. And these are actually translated as eh. I need that lowercase. Eh and n. Now in makes an eh sound. This is used for any noun that you can think of. So you can have un chien, which is a dog, or even one dog. Fille, a girl, or a daughter. But if you're using un with the accent grave, this is used for vowels, before any vowels. So for instance, you have un habitant, which equals a farmer. Or you have un avocat, which equals a lawyer. So that's one way you can think about that. If you're using this version, you're usually going to put it before a vowel, or in the case of a feminine word. For instance, fille is feminine. So you might run into folks who might put un fille. But not all of us do that. Even though pronunciation-wise, we will have the elongated N, or the heavily nasalized N. Scrolling down. And now you're going to have the sum. Now the reason why I'm putting this here is because if you want to say sum of something, you use de. De. So for instance, you have des noms some men, des chiens, some dogs. No, I don't want to do that. De la table, some tables. De. So, looking at all these, you can screenshot these, write them down. I hope you're writing this down. And let's get into some practices. All right. They form some ladies. You could say that too. I know you don't know that word actually, and I'm not gonna tell you that yet. So we'll just leave it like this. And plural. So you have all right. Let's get into this. So for number one, nom blank t'es joué dans la cour. And you can put an R here actually. Nom blank t'es joué dans la cour. Nom blank t'es joué dans la cour. Played in the yard. Blank played in the yard. Now remember, this is the plural. Now this isn't the plural. What is the plural? Alright, Mac, you got it right. So you have the hyphenated ye. Nom ye t'es joué dans la cour. Men played in the yard. Nom ye t'es joué dans la cour. Now we're going with the plural. Plural of the. Which, again, this has technically three ways. Femme, blank, api danser. Femme, blank, api danser. Blank are dancing. Blank are dancing. Yep. Y'all are also correct. As you can use the hyphenated ye or even the hyphenated la ye. Femme ye api danser. Femme la ye api danser. Blank habitant. Blank habitant. Blank farmer. Blank farmer. Maybe. Think about it. What's A? Is a vowel. So what would that be? That's correct. Un habitant. Un habitant. A farmer. Blank lapin. Blank lapin. Blank rabbit. Blank rabbit. Pink dots, you're correct. Un lapin. Un lapin. A rabbit. I'm fighting this keyboard over that accent. I get you. Now, the interesting thing about these two sentences, and I'm looking at the ye hyphenated, is with these two, you actually have something that happens in Louisiana when speaking to speakers that you might not think about. So, for instance, if you take the same exact sentence, nom y été joué dans la cour. Nom y été joué dans la cour. A lot of times, if you don't see these two together, and it's very slight, you might not even notice it. Nom y était joué dans la cour. A lot of times, if you actually wrote that out, it would sound like this. Nom y été joué dans la cour. And that's basically, in English, men, they played in the yard. Nom y était joué dans la cour. Men, they played in the yard. Nom y était joué dans la cour. Or this might even be the men. And that's because a lot of times in Creole, context-wise, this lets you know that this is plural. As you might see at the end of a sentence, il était pas un homme. Il était pas un homme. They didn't have men. I don't know why. This is the word that came. I'm gonna use a different word. Il était pas un chien. They didn't have dogs. Il était pas un chien. They didn't have dogs. This is contextual. As due to the context, you can actually know that this is a plural. And if you want to avoid that context, you can use they. Il était pas un chien. They didn't have dogs, or some dogs. Or even you can say, il était pas un chien hier. They didn't have dogs. So if you use, for instance, that other phrase, femme hier a pu danser, you can see, femme hier. I'm not going to tell you about that just yet. Femme hier a pu danser. Now, what I was about to do was I was about to combine these two and make a contraction. So it would have been like femme hier pu danser. Femme hier pu danser. And if y'all remember from earlier in the lesson, we had another example of li plus ap. It became la paix. And that's because when you have two vowels, so taking for instance, you have one vowel here, which is the I, also pronounced as an E in Creole, and you have the A, or the A in Creole. These are two vowels. So these would contract into one word, la paix, with an apostrophe marker. And we can highlight those. Same thing with this one. You have a vowel, which is the E accent aigu, accent aigu. Yeah. Bam. With the vowel A, contracts to yape. Yape. Now, this doesn't always work. Now, for the vast majority of the time it does, but not always. One instance you might see where it doesn't work is when you have mot and envie. Mot and envie. Which, as we know, mot means I. However, envie is not like in your English envy. It's more as in your Louisiana English envie, which is to want something or to feel like having, or etc., etc. So, mon envie. You wouldn't, even though you have a vowel right here, which is the O, and you have a vowel right here, which is the E or the E sound, these wouldn't contract into mon vie. That's a no-go. Those would not contract into mon vie. However, if you have mo and ole, which is I want, these two do contract. These do contract and become mo le, I want. So just keep that in mind. Not every contraction, not every vowel, when two vowels are together, they don't always contract, but more times than likely they do. So just keep that in mind. You might also, for instance, hear mo ole as an emphasis. Oh, mo ole fesa. That's like emphasizing, I want to do that. Now I'm gonna give y'all an option. We can end it here, or we can continue on with some other things, or a couple other things, and then end it there. So I'll give y'all the option. Would y'all like to learn some words, or would y'all like to end it there? Because said continue. Well, let me take my jacket off, because I am getting sweat. I am getting hot. I have like they got this place that sells like matcha. I never had matcha before, but somebody told me to get it. I don't think I like it, but it's not that bad. It's not that bad. All right, we're gonna do some verbs. Belle said end. Belle said I'm gonna need some coffee. All right. We have 3 that want to continue, and we have 1 that wants to end. So Belle, if this is recorded, you'll see it again on the YouTube channel. If not, I'll run through these again. Watch, it's just grass water. I mean, shoot. I guess. So for verbs, we're going to go over some verbs. Now, I'm not going to go over salutations and greetings because I actually have a video on that on my TikTok. However, we'll go over some verbs that we might not have learned. So on the left side, you see that we have a few set of words. So you have stem verbs. So you have 1 stem verbs, and these are your verbs that don't necessarily change. And then you have your 2 stem verbs. And these are verbs that have 2 different forms. So for your 1 stem verbs, like you see on the left, you have écrit, which is to write, lire, or even li. Told you, li can be very ambiguous. You have boire, which is to drink, voir, which is to see, and croire, or even cro, mo croso, which is to believe or to think. I ain't giving you no money. Écrit, lire, boire, voir, croire, and croire. Now for your 2 stem, on the opposite side, you have, and let me see if I can scroll up. You have parler, to speak, manger, to eat. I think that says oublier, if I can see to forget. Donner, to give, and marcher, to walk. Now, what's something that you notice about the 1 stem and the 2 stem verbs? What do they end with? So what I can say is a lot of times the two-stem verbs end with e, the sound e at the end. So accent aigu. Parler, manger, blier, donner, marcher, plier, plisser, baigner. You catch my drift? For the one-stem verbs, you sometimes ending with the I or the I or the A. So écrit, lit, bois, ois, cro, or quoi. Now for one-stem verbs, these don't change. They stay the exact same throughout their usage. So for instance, if you want to use he writes, or I write, moi écrit, I write. To écrit, you write. Lit écrit, he writes. And one thing you notice is there's no real conjugation. Moi écrit, toi écrit, lit écrit. These are not conjugating. These are actually staying the exact same. They're the exact same form of the verb for all of the pronouns. Now, in English, these do change. I write, you write, he writes, she writes. I have, you have, she has. That's a conjugation. Or in French, you have j'ai, tu as, il a, nous avons, vous avez. But in Creole, you don't. And so you have, for instance, as B wrote down in the comments, you have vous écrit. You or y'all write. For the two-stem verbs, however, it still stays, it actually does, it works in a similar way. The only difference is you have two different forms. So when we mean two different forms, you have the long form, which we're going to take the word parler. Actually, I like blier more. You're going to take the word blier. This is the long form of the word forgot. Blier. But then you have bli, which is the short form. If you take manger, you have that long form. And then you take mange, which is the short form. And what you see with this is that the accent aigu, or this I with the little accent marker, is dropping. So if you wanted to say I forget, m'oublie, t'oublie, n'oublie, and the same thing happens with mange. Mange, mange, nous mange. However, the thing with these is that when you have when you use the long form, so blier or manger, it can actually mean it can actually be used in the past tense. So for instance, take mange, mon mange, mon manger, I eat, to manger, you ate, nous mange, nous manger, we ate. The same thing happens with blier. Mo blier, I forgot. T'oublier, you forgot. Then n'oublier, we forgot. Now I'm about to throw a wrench in y'all. Now, if we're going back to the one-stem verbs, when you have moi écrit, toi écrit, li écrit, vous écrit, well, if you want to make those past tense, you can also say moi écrit. I wrote. Toi écrit. You wrote. However, a lot of times, and you might see it sometimes, this I will have an accent marker on it to let you know that it's in the past tense. So, mo écrit with the accent marker, I wrote. I tend not to write it because I think it's just contextual. Li écrit, he wrote. But if you want to avoid that, if you want to avoid all of that, I'm going to introduce you to the past tense marker. So below, you have te. And this is like your past tense marker. This, you can use this to mark the past tense, as we have actually been doing throughout the entire lesson. You've actually seen this before, te. And so for if you want to do with your one-stem verbs, for instance, you have mo écrit, which is I write. Well, if you want to say I wrote, and you don't want to just use mo écrit again, you can actually say mo te écrit, I wrote. And the te and not the te, sometimes it, like in English you have the had, oh I had done this, or I wrote this, I had wrote this. That's one way you can think about it. Mo te écrit ça, I had wrote this, or I have wrote this. Mo écrit ça, I wrote that, or I wrote this. Mo écrit, mo te écrit. To écrit. To te écrit. And you see, as I said before, the two vowels, this is an instance where these do not shorten, they do not contract. They stay exactly how they are. Separated. Mo te écrit, to te écrit. These do not contract. Now, for your long stem, for instance, you have mange, so mo mange. You can also use te, mo te manger. How often? Well, we'll see, because I actually just started these lessons today. Mo te manger. So I ate. Now the thing when you're using te is usually the te, once you're using te, you'll prefer the long form of the verb. However, some dialects and some people prefer the short form. And I'm gonna get into that in a little bit. So mo te manger, or even so m'oublie and mo te lier. Mote. Now, going on to what I said about the long form and the short form. Some folks prefer the short form, some folks prefer the long form. Not firm, but form. I'm doing that Louisiana thing where we make all the ORs the ER, like pernt and orange. But, so for instance, take the long form of donner, and then take the short form, don. You will hear folks say, mo te don, I gave, rather than mo te donné, I gave. But both of these are valid. Both of these are valid. You could say both. However, there's a lot of howevers. You will also hear folks use the long form over the short form. So they will only use the long form. So for instance, you might hear folks in Point Capi say mo parler for I speak instead of mo parle for I speak. And so for them, you kind of do have to use te, mo te parler for I spoke. Versus somebody who says mo parle for I speak might say mo parler for I spoke. And that is, I think, where we could stop. I think we could stop there. Are there any questions? Was this helpful? Did this deepen your knowledge of Creole, giving you a basis. Can you save this? Let me press the undo typing. I'm gonna try to put it on YouTube myself, and then y'all can see it from there. I could do more. Maybe like a once a week, twice a week type of thing. Not every night. Okay, I got some video games and all that other stuff to play. But if that's all, good night, y'all, and I'll see you on the next time.